At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability. ASU isn't just ahead of the curve, it's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online, that's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
You got problems that you ought to be concerned with. Moolah! You don't know how you're supposed to earn it, or what to do with it, or how to keep it. You're a freak with a dark, shameful secret. But you're not the only one. Get your hidden financial fears with a blast of sun. Now your healing has begun. It's Bad with Money with Gabe S. Dunn.
Hello and welcome to Bad with Money, a show about finances and feelings where we don't talk down to you. I'm your host, Gabe S. Dunn, and with me today is Kara Stevens. Do you want to tell my audience who you are and what you do?
Yes, I am the founder of the Frugal Feminista, and I talk at the intersection of emotions and money. So this is going to be a great conversation.
Just a heads up, Kara's daughter you might hear her in the background, which is fine. We love a built-out soundscape. You know what I mean? Let us show you other podcasts. They record their cars going over gravel. They record doorbells ringing when they want to give, the space kind of a feel. That's sort of the authenticity we bring you here at Bad with Money.
I appreciate that.
So when did you start thinking about money in this way?
Honestly, it was when I started having student loan debt that I couldn't avoid and realized that my credit card debt and my student loan debt, which was around $65K, was not going to go away. And I had been avoiding it for a while. And I realized, my mom was like, the bills don't go away. And I was like, really? Because I've been ghosting them for a good couple months. And they keep on coming back and the balances keep on getting higher. And she's like, my dear, it's because that's late fees, 1, and that is interest accruing, 2. And so that was my first realization that 1, I couldn't avoid debt. And then later, after getting out of debt and then feeling this void and this still angst and anxiety around money, I realized that my emotions and relationship with money still had to do some healing for it to match up with the success I've had with eliminating debt, but I was still very fearful, very scarcity mindset driven, just afraid and anxious about spending, about making mistakes, about taking risks. So I think it was over the course of at least 5 to 6 years of getting out of debt, staying out of debt, but not feeling any better about money.
Yeah. What was the student loan debt sort of holding you back from? Was it like an emotional feeling of having this chasing you through life? Or was it like, oh, these are actually getting more and more, you said late fees and stuff like that. So is it a combination of sort of the reality of the late fees and also feeling like I can't breathe because this is on my, it's sort of taking up my mind space?
Yeah. And it was also lack of knowledge. I didn't know anything about loans. You know what I mean? I was 18, you go to college, you're just happy to get into the school of your choice or one of your choices. You're away from home. And I didn't know anything about notes and promissory notes and signing paperwork. And I didn't know anything about that. So it was, I didn't know I had to pay it back. Psych, I got to pay it back. They're I was like, no, I'm not paying it back. Why they keep on asking? And then 2, I had no job. This was I graduated in 2001 around September 11th. So I had no job and I was cobbling together part-time jobs. I was just in a very unsettled state postgraduate. And so all of those things kind of came together and created this oh my God, my life is not going well and this is making it worse. So what can I do? What can I begin to do since, I'm here, it's not going to go away. That was the biggest realization. And that was kind of the impetus to be wow, if I don't continue, if I don't start, it'll get worse. That was the realization.
How did your mom find out about what was happening?
I was complaining. I was there in the front of the house talking about, why, Mom, are they asking me for this money? Don't they know I'm not going to give it back? Looking for her to give me comfort. That's what I thought. That's what I thought. But honestly, not that it's her fault, but growing up, when the credit card, the debt collectors will call, she's like, tell them not here. Tell them not here. So I was kind of doing the equivalent if you really want to talk about it. So I didn't know that there was a second part where she actually paid the stuff back. I was just there for the first part and the middle part. So I didn't really make the connection that you can avoid for a while, but you're still going to have to eventually pay it back. So she was looking at me like she had taught me something different. Like, don't you know you have to pay it back? And I was like, no, because I guess I had seen all this while that we lie. We say we're not here.
Oh my God. That's one of those things where your parents are teaching you stuff without you even realizing, like without them realizing that's what they're doing. And you're like picking up, I feel like that comes up with money so much, is that you're like picking up stuff from your family that they're not even conscious of imparting to you, especially if they don't talk to you about it otherwise. You just get these ideas like, oh, okay, well, this is what you do.
Right.
It's interesting to talk about, to start with student loans, because I didn't anticipate that being sort of a part of your story, but I wrote a book about money that came out in 2019. And part of the book was I spoke to specifically like Black people who had gone to college and how there was this sense of unfairness because you're told all your life, okay, better yourself. Okay, go to these schools. And it was actually like the statistics at the time were that the people with the most student loan debt were people of color who were like, well, I'm trying to have economic mobility, or I'm trying to, like, I'm doing what you're telling me to do, America. And I'm rewarded with bullshit.
Right. No, it's very, very true. And I think that I absolutely, not that I knew the statistic at that time, but I would have used it, to be like, that is why I'm not paying this back. But that's the honest to God truth, that the irony in this country is that you are sold this narrative that if you, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, which is getting loans to a certain degree, and you go to these schools that are vetted, accredited, and it's supposed to not guarantee you, but more or less put you on the track of being able to garner a salary that allows you to move up into the upper echelons of society economically. But you get straddled with debt. They don't tell you that part. And there's also, when you compare it to especially there's like Black women, compare it to their white counterparts who have generational wealth, where parents can either, one, pay for them to go to college, two, pay for them outside of college where they can get the first down payment on a home. And that has been my largest conversation with women of color post-graduation, those that went to the Stanfords and the Harvards in my circle. They regret it because they say, okay, I got this fancy degree. It didn't offer me the connections, the networking, the fast track to C-suite positions or leadership positions or whatever it was. And now I cannot buy a home, right? Because I'm in debt. So what they saw was that their counterparts in college were either getting one or both. Either they paid or, were able to get through, and their parents were able to help them out with like life stage adjustments and the cost of those things and starting their life post-grad as adults, and see that they're able to build wealth by home ownership early, or able to build wealth because they started them investing early before they went to college. So they can accrue debt, but at the same time, they're accruing wealth, right? And so none of these things were structures that were placed in place for people like me who were taught, like, you're smart, you're one of the smart ones, go to college, without saying it's an incomplete conversation, because the achievement gap, which is supposed to be like the idea of closing access to quality education and using it as a form of social mobility, without coupling it with wealth conversations to close the wealth gap, is disingenuous at best and dangerous at worst, So that is what I've noticed from my high performing friends and family who they regret the degrees because of the debt, and they also have a lot of beliefs that they would have done something different had they known the financial implications for their life.
Especially in 2001, for particularly Black women, it was like, you have to get into these schools because when you go to interview, some white fucking bro from sorry to Arizona State, but some white fucking bro from Arizona State is going to be in the same applicant pool as you, a Black woman from Stanford, and they might just wholesale throw out your application if you're also from ASU. Especially in 2001, thinking about, I mean, I was, in 8th grade. It was a different time where that was so pushed. And there was this coming out of the 90s, this idea of, well, everybody's just going to do well because the 90s were kind of like prosperous. So it's like, don't worry, this is going to absolutely lead you to like an amazing corporate job.
No, it doesn't. I mean, I remember when I even had internships when I was a high school student and just realizing that early on, the roles that race and gender play and colorism play in social mobility for me. And luckily I got that lesson when I was 17. So I knew that if I couldn't be my authentic self at 17, that it's best that I cut my losses and move into a career and spaces that allowed me to be. And so I became a teacher, that allowed me to be justice oriented, to be focused on, healing our community. And so I could have had even more debt, but luckily, I mean, 65K is enough with the credit card debt, but it didn't balloon into 6-figure debt, luckily. But yeah, I completely agree.
You guys know that I take testosterone and that causes your hair to thin, and my hair is thinning. And I want it to thin to a certain degree, but I don't need it to thin as much as it may end up thinning. So what can I do about that? And as you guys know, I have known about Nutrafol for a while, and I have been taking it. They were kind enough to send me some samples like a few weeks ago, and I have seen decreased shedding. Like, my hair sheds so much in the shower, and that always freaked me out, made me feel really self-conscious, just would always think, is this too much hair? And after taking Nutrafol, I have noticed decreased shedding. This year, there is nothing holding you back from loving your hair again. Hair is so much more than what you see on the surface. It's a reflection of what's happening inside, such as my testosterone. Let Nutrafol target the key root causes of your thinning hair and help you grow stronger, healthier strands from within. Hair thinning is very common, okay? And it's very frustrating that it's kind of a new thing that's going on for me as I transition. And I need all the help I can get, especially because the shedding is so freaky. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people. See thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. I cannot wait to get to the 3-month mark if it's already helping now. Physician formulated with 100% drug-free ingredients, Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth from within by targeting key root causes of thinning, okay? So they are stress, hormones, aging, nutrition, lifestyle, metabolism, through whole body health. Building a hair growth routine is simple. Purchase online, no prescription required. Automated deliveries and free shipping keep you on track. Plus, with the Nutrafol subscription, you can save up to 20%. You'll have access to free naturopathic doctor consults, and a Headspace meditation membership is included. While many supplements rely solely on ingredient studies, Nutrafol clinically tests final formulations to ensure their efficacy. In a clinical study, 72% of men saw more scalp coverage after taking Nutrafol Men Hair Growth Supplement for 6 months, and 86% of women saw improved hair growth after taking Nutrafol Women Hair Growth Supplements for 6 months. Start your hair growth journey with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month's subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code BWM. Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code BWM. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code BWM. I was looking for a day job. As you guys know from listening to this show, making money consistently is really important, and it's really scary when it's not happening. And so I was looking for a job, and I was looking all over. I was going to places. I was trying to do that old school thing of maybe you just leave a resume at the smoothie shop. I don't know. But I found my job so easily using Indeed. And I actually recommended Indeed to other people to use when they come in and they say, oh, how can I work here? I say, I actually found the job on Indeed. So go look at Indeed, because that is literally how I found my job and applied and got hired. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach people you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it matched me to the right job. It showed me exactly the types of jobs I was looking for. I was able to parse through. I was able to see the locations. I was able to see the requirements. I was able to apply. I don't know how I would have done it without Indeed, truly. And it obviously allowed this business to find the right people, aka me. With Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? In the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There is no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/badwithmoney. Just go to Indeed.com/badwithmoney right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/badwithmoney. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Where are you from?
I'm from New York.
Okay. I didn't want to assume. The accent is very charming, but I didn't want to assume.
Yeah. I'm a New Yorker, but I'm first generation American. My family's from Antigua.
And also about when you talked about healing your community, I was curious about being a teacher in New York and what that was like. What did that kind of show you about money? I'm curious.
Being a teacher in New York showed me so many different things. As a teacher, I wanted to work in the school districts I grew up in. I didn't go to the schools that I grew up in the community I grew up in, because they were just poor performing, unfortunately. And we have a lot of discussions about that. But I went back after I went to Oberlin for undergrad. I came back to New York because I wanted to not be the unicorn in the community about like having gone to these, like we consider to be prestigious schools or good schools, and then not be an example of this is quite possible because I'm from around the way too. So what I did see as I was still in student loan debt and had that realization moment with my mom in the house, I realized too that as I was learning about money, I started teaching my students about money. So I would give them dictionaries, but I'll also give them piggy banks because that was like my gift to them for Christmas. And I really began to teach them in various ways, not just the idea about save your money, because I didn't want to tell them that that's where their relationship with money started and ended. But I did want to give them more confidence about you have the power to do small things in your life to grow wealth, which was with the piggy bank. Do you know what I mean? So it wasn't the saving aspect. It was like the power to control or the power to make change aspect of what a piggy bank was. So we all can like find coins in the house, find coins around the way and put them in a piggy bank. And that really helped them begin to see, wow, it was fun. I didn't make it too heavy handed. And so that was one of the big things I learned about just my community, that teaching them was one thing, but teaching them life skills like money was something I felt was always missing. And because the community is a very immigrant-based community from Central America now, the Caribbean, English-speaking Caribbean, there were different relationships with money for the parents. So I realized too that some parents, because of their immigration status, right? Because of the non-parallel institutions that existed in their countries. So the stock market didn't exist, or, traditional forms of structural savings didn't exist, that having these conversations had to first come with a level of trust, right? You just can't go in and be like, here are things that you may want to consider if they think that you're somehow connected to social security numbers, somehow connected with, identity and legality and status. So what I found was that the majority of my conversations landed with my students. But in hindsight, I think that for any community that is going to have social mobility, it has to be intergenerational. It has to be intergenerational. You just can't teach the kid who's technically the least powerful person. You can teach them a concept, but then it has to be rooted someplace else. It has to be connected. And it has to be, I felt, done in a way where the parents feel that they can express and think about their money stories, especially if it's coming from two different places and they're trying to navigate what does that mean to bring some of like my ideas from like my home country into this new place. What does that mean for this first generation American child? And what does that mean for me in my new home? I really do think very much about how can schools improve how they begin to think about financial literacy for marginalized communities.
It is interesting to talk about the parents coming in because I feel like it's hard to do all of that when you're in survival mode and when they're very, you know, it must be such a shock to come into the US and to think what a stock market and you have to invest for retirement and what is all of this? And then even the ability to read paperwork. You know, I've talked to a lot of people who they're the English translators for their parents. So what does this paperwork look like? Why is the FAFSA like this? What does it mean to put money in a bank? You know, it's so much.
Yeah, it is. And I think that one of the things that facilitates conversations, like I said, is that trust piece and also starting with what's the most relatable, right? So whatever structure that everyone saves in some kind of way, some type of institution. So let's start there and figure out what could be a parallel or a comparable institution here and start there. So if stocks are scary, don't start with stocks. Do you know what I mean? Start with consistent savings and then maybe a high yield savings account and then maybe a CD. So you begin to see this is the vehicles, that savings that can support you and kind of get your strong foundation there. Once you get comfortable with that, then we move to like, how does your credit, how does having credit impact your home ownership, because not a lot of times, but enough times from the communities I served, home ownership was a key part, was a top priority.
I was going to ask about that. What's that about?
I think because, from the Caribbean, at least, like having land, having a home is what an adult does, and it's a form of wealth. So say like I'm from Antigua, there's no standard stock market. People get wealth through their jobs. They get through land, right? Through homes. So when you see a lot of immigrants buying their first home, sometimes before even Americans, it's because in their head, this is where you put your money to something that you can knock on, something that no one can take you out of, but getting them smart about the loans, the loan agreements, getting them smart about what it means to be a first-time home buyer is the next step. So that's why I would say would be like the reason why home ownership is so alluring to first generation or like new Americans or immigrants from another country.
That's interesting because I feel like that's becoming less and less something that Americans that were born here feel that is achievable or feel that they even want to do. Part of me, it's interesting. My friend and I were talking about him purchasing a home in California, and he was like, well, now I'm rethinking it because everything burns down. And I was like, yeah, well, and my parents just left Florida for a few reasons, but one of them was sort of like the flooding is just like too much. So I feel like we're also becoming so climate displaced that a lot of these things that I think have been markers of the American dream are sort of like much scarier now.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good point in terms of what it may mean for Americans versus what it may mean for like a first generation immigrant. And I also think too, a couple things. Being an immigrant, and they've done like different studies about like immigration in general, even people who migrate from the South to the North or North to the South, people that pick up and move, they have a different skill set than the people that are already there in a lot of ways, because they're not trying to go back to, where they came from. They had to like make a lot of decisions, take a lot of risk. And for a lot of times do in America the jobs that the average American may not want to do because, they're new, they're trying to acquire wealth. And in a lot of ways, two things. One, they can send the money back home to buy something there that stretches that has the benefit of having the American dollar. Two, what I've seen is that they may not be as picky in terms of the home, right? Like it doesn't have to be a brownstone. It doesn't have to be in a particular, it has to be safe, but it may be the smallest home on the best block, or it may not be it may be a regular home in a block that will eventually hopefully grow. But I think the understanding of the landscape makes them seem fearless, but I think it's a lot of times just ignorance, Also too, there are communities that they may not be welcomed, which forces them to purchase in other areas. And so I think those are a couple of the factors that separates it. And I think too, Americans in general, as we are grappling with so many different political issues, grappling with the student loans. For some of us, like you said, you were 8 in 2001. So you must have been through the Great Resignation.
I was in 8th grade.
8th grade.
Yeah,
I Great Resignation. Yeah, you go through a lot. So there's a dystopic feel for a lot of young people that they may not ever feel the need to want to place roots down right now because everything seems so tenuous, job market, student loans, some of them were forgiven, but maybe yours may not have been forgiven. Just overall distrust in institutions and a sense of, not being able to have these markers of success, and also people not believing what Gen Z and what younger millennials are going through because they're comparing through the lens of baby boomers who had things given to them at wholesale in a lot of ways. So I find it makes sense that for the immigrant mindset, that's not their priority, right? That they don't have that backdrop and context and financial baggage put on them for them to start having these types of conversations.
Yeah, I think we're going to all have to sort of restructure what the markers of success look like, because they're coming from the boomer era. And it's like, maybe we got to just like not take it to heart. You talk a lot about emotions dictating money, and maybe we just have to take out the shoulds and the parts that are like failures, quote unquote, to us, when it's just kind of a neutral reality of life.
Have you or someone you know been a victim of identity theft, harassed, stalked, doxxed? Privacy matters, especially to someone like me who has a bit of a public persona, but it also matters to my listeners because this kind of thing can happen to anyone. Do you ever wonder how much of your personal data is out there on the internet for anyone to see? More than you think. Your name, your contact info, your social security number, your home address, even information about your family members, all compiled by data brokers and sold online. Data brokers make a profit off your data, and your data is a commodity. Anyone on the web can buy your private details. This can lead to identity theft, phishing attempts, harassment, and unwanted spam calls. But you can now protect your privacy with Delete Me. I share a lot of my life online, so I am hyper aware of my safety and security. It's easier than ever before to find personal information about people online, and all of this data is just hanging out on the web, but it can have actual consequences in the real world. I have used Delete Me. I had an instance where some stuff was going on Reddit. I don't want to draw more attention to it, but I used Delete Me because a friend of mine who's a sex worker actually told me about it. And it's something that a lot of women online use in order to keep their information safe from stalkers and harassers. The solution that we used is called Delete Me. It is a subscription service that removes your personal info from hundreds of data brokers. I have actually used this. I used this years ago, and so that's why I'm choosing to personally endorse it. If you sign up and provide Delete Me with exactly what information you want deleted, their experts take it from there. Delete Me sends you regular, personalized privacy reports showing what info they found, where they found it, and what they removed. Delete Me isn't just a one-time service. It is always working for you, constantly monitoring and removing the personal information you don't want on the internet. To put it simply, Delete Me does all the hard work of wiping you and your family's personal information from data broker websites. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me, now at a special discount for my listeners. Today, get 20% off your Delete Me plan by texting BAD MONEY to 64000. Text BAD MONEY to 64000. That's BAD MONEY, all one word, to 64000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Investing can sometimes feel overwhelming with all the fancy jargon that makes it seem more complicated than it really is. Maybe all those finance bros that just want another thing they can try and quote unquote mansplain. And yes, I am a trans guy and I can mansplain, but I also have the experience of being mansplained too. And especially about money. I talk about on this show all the time how people pitch themselves to the show and they feel like they can make investing this big scary thing that, is this gatekept knowledge. So for a long time, I felt like I couldn't really do it, or that I didn't have the knowledge to do it, or that it was like too big of a scary task. And Acorns believes that anyone can be an investor. That's why they make it easy to stick to basic time-tested principles that give your money a chance to grow. One of the things that happened was that I truly thought that I could not manage my own investments, or that I couldn't manage my own retirement fund. I couldn't manage my own personal investments. I was very scared. It took me a long time to stop paying someone else to do it and to feel confident that I could do it. And I think maybe what would have helped is being able to invest in smaller ways before I was like thrust into big time investing. And you don't even need to do big time investing. I just literally have my retirement and then the amount that I am comfortable with. And Acorns is a perfect way to do that little amount that you're comfortable with. Today's episode is sponsored by Acorns. Acorns is a financial wellness app that makes it easy to start saving and investing for your future. You don't need to be an expert. Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that matches you and your money goals. You don't need to be rich. Acorns lets you get started with the spare money you've got right now, even if all you've got is spare change. You don't need to feel like financial wellness is impossible. Acorns gives you small, simple steps to get you and your money on track. Any little bit of money you put in the market right now will eventually grow. That's just the way it works. I know there are huge dips and it can be really scary, but a lot of it is just about patience and starting. Sign up now and join the over 13 million all-time customers who have already saved and invested over $22 billion with Acorns. Head to acorns.com/badmoney or download the Acorns app to get started. Paid non-client endorsement. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 1 compensation provided. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/badmoney.
I wanted to ask too, you mentioned earlier that your friends and even possibly yourself would have done something differently had you guys known about loans. What kind of stuff have they talked about or that you've thought about you would have maybe done differently that this next generation could think about?
I think that they might have gone to schools that gave them more money instead of more prestige. As an example, I got some partial scholarships to some other schools, but because I thought that Oberlin had a better, like a cachet to it compared to them, that would be the school, but they did not give me, I think I had less financial aid when compared to other schools that gave me more money. That's one. Two, even just thinking between community college and then doing that for 2 years and then saving that money and then going to a school of your choice, whether it be in-state or in city. I think also considering the concept of high schools, even if you're talking to a younger audience, super much younger, of going to a high school that allows you to accumulate college credits while you're still in high school. Because there are high schools that allow for you to even get an associate's degree by the time you graduate, cutting down the cost of education. Some of us may want to go have a gap year, earn some money, and then go to college. That's another thing. Some of us may even rethink the whole idea of college, just like, have a business that they've started to grow and then decide to spend those 4 years really nurturing it. I think also college isn't for everyone. And that's not an excuse because it's a very touchy topic for people of color because we don't want to use the messaging that college isn't for everyone, meaning that you're stupid, you're not capable of doing 4 years of, writing and critical thinking. So you should just go do something else. So I want to be very clear about that. And also having a college degree for people of color is still a form of defense from discrimination, So I'm not saying any of that, but I'm just saying when going back, things to consider. Who's to say that it would have been even better or worse, but just things to consider when you're thinking about the bottom line is what are the numbers? And if you're comfortable with the numbers, then move forward. My biggest concern and the concern of my friends was that we had no idea what loans meant, right? That's the thing. we didn't understand it, and our parents didn't teach us. Our parents didn't teach us, and we didn't understand what it would mean for our life later. And I think because our parents were so happy for us to go to some of these schools and be part of like this American tradition, that they figured it will all work out because you did what you said you were supposed to do. And so it's that anger and rage from a lot of my friends are like now in their 40s and their 50s who are, let's just say, in a lot of ways, extremely credentialed, but extremely broke, right? Still looking down the barrel of 6 and 5-figure debt, wanting to purchase something, but not feeling that they can, and having conflicting priorities financially at this age of figuring out, do I want to do a career switch? Do I want to do something different? And what will that be in terms of implications for my income? So it's those kinds of things that we talk about.
Yeah, I don't think you're right. It's sort of like going back, you have no idea if it would have been better. But I think speaking to young people moving forward, I'm kind of the mindset, I wish that I knew that money wasn't always going to come in. And that part of it is making the money to then put it aside so that you are comfortable during the times when money isn't coming in. I have always had this mindset of like, just do the thing and then I'll figure it out later, which now it's kind of funny because now I'm older and I'm just like, I don't know, the world is so bleak that I'm like, whatever, money's not real, who cares?
Right.
How has the people that you work with or speak to, how has that changed now at all ages for the world as it stands?
In some ways, for a lot of people of color, women of color, they're like, shit hasn't changed. It's like,
right?
It's just like same stuff. Do you know what I mean? So it's just kind of like, this is more foolishness, but it hasn't really changed the expectation, the belief systems about how, America treats its most vulnerable communities. So I think if anything, it may create more of a fire to mobilize and get organized with their personal finances, because they're like, okay, this is going to be a long 4 years. Let me start being more intentional about fill in the blank, reducing my debt, maybe buying locally instead of buying big box corporate, thinking about being able to explore what leaving the country looks like I did. I actually left the States. I'm in Ghana.
Really?
Yeah.
When did you leave?
2023.
Wait. We have to go back to that.
Yeah.
Wait, when did you decide to leave and why Ghana and start at the beginning? That's fascinating. I thought you were in New York.
No. I'm from New York. I go back, so I'll give you all the tea. So I studied in Ghana when I was in college, right? And like I said, my family's from the Caribbean. So they had similar cultural things, not the same, but similar enough. Where I was like, okay, this is a good place. I feel comfortable. And then fast forward 20 years later, or 15, 17 years later, I meet my husband, who happens to be Ghanaian, in New York.
Whoa.
Yeah. We met at like Walgreens.
In Hebrew, we call that bashert, which means fate.
I love that.
Like
bashert, yes.
Yeah, like fated by God.
I'm taking that. So thanks, Gabe. So yeah, so we were just kind of like, my belief system around how I wanted to live. Like I had said, I had those experiences with internships that was just like, this is probably not going to be the best fit my personality. I need to be in teaching. And then I started teaching for a while and I loved it until I didn't. Then I became an administrator. And when I was in debt, I started a blogspot called Girl Get Your Life Together, when I was learning that I had to pay this damn money back, right?
Blogspot, hell yeah.
Yeah, that was 2006, 2004, right? And so I started to share with my girlfriends. So fast forward, the blogspot becomes the Frugal Feminista, like its 4th or 5th iteration. And the Frugal Feminista now is able, I create content, I write books and all these other kinds of things. So pandemic hits and I'm looking around at my life and I'm like, this can't be it, right? We have a daughter who then is around 4 or 5, and then we have Trump. And so we have the racial reckoning of America happening before our eyes as we are quarantined. And then we're like, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. And I was really more worried about my daughter being able to have a regular life. I was really, really concerned. It's like an existential crisis as the world was going through its existential crisis and health crisis, like what am I going to leave her? What am I going to give her? The same issues I had growing up in the 80s. Let's do something different, right? Let's do something different. So we planned. We said, okay, we had been to Ghana back and forth over a couple of summers just to visit his family and things like that. But what if we actually moved? So the time before we fully moved, we went to visit with the lens of what would I need in order to feel comfortable? Because as much as I love visiting Ghana, I'm a New Yorker, so I needed certain things. I was like, I'm not going to lie and be like, oh, it's okay. It's all good. No, I was like, where are the cafes? What's up with my Wi-Fi? I needed certain things to feel comfortable at first. And then other things that were super different, I could acclimate to. And so I came with the mission of, okay, where are the coffee shops? Where are the things that I need? And I found them. And I was like, okay, fine. I was like, you got strong Wi-Fi? We do. Minus the issue that we just had right now. But
I had a service outage in Los Angeles last night. It's not unique.
Yeah, no, but we had super, so those are the kind of structural things that we had to bring. And then for about 3 years, we eliminated any debt that we had. We sublet the place. We started buying a home here. That was the process of it. And then I was still a vice principal out of school. And then I put in my resignation, which was the hardest because you, I like a good steady money, but I could always come back, and the Frugal Feminista was growing. So why not take a chance, especially with the world and its foolishness? What's the worst that could happen? I go back to a job, or I have to figure it out. So that's and the rationale for that was I wanted my daughter to be happy and not have to deal with people talking about her, calling her dark, X, Y, and Z, African booty scratcher, that, all those things that I had to endure. And I could see as an educator for elementary school and middle school, a lot of kids having the same issues. I was like, let me just try and protect my daughter and my peace of mind and, come and see it as an experiment. Could we actually stay?
What have you seen as the difference for her?
I think she's happy. I mean, I don't think she was unhappy, but New York is cold. New York is fast. It's simple things. Say I would have to ask around, do you know a doctor or a pediatrician that you could recommend that's a Black female doctor or Black female, or someone that, would understand, or a dermatologist that, say, for example, I went to a dermatologist and at that time I had locks and she called them braids. And I was like, sis, there's a difference. It was just culturally understood. So here, you don't need any directory because everyone's mostly Black. You know what I mean? And she gets to see these examples similar to we were talking about the example of me, dodging my debt the same way I learned from my mother to run away from the creditors. She learned just by example that anything is possible for her because her doctor is a Black woman, but her classmates, she goes to international school. They're from all around the world. And she feels like she belongs, and she likes to code now. She has a sense of pride. I don't think she did not have a sense of pride as a student, because I tried to figure out the best places for her. But there's a sense of joy and just being a kid. I don't think she's as adultified as I know she probably would be at a later stage in a New York City public school, just my experience in 17 years. So those are the little ways. Our Saturdays are a lot quieter. I just think in general, she has peace of mind and more space because in New York, the places like this, and we used to worry about making too much noise for our neighbors. Now she can skip. You heard her screaming, she can holler, she can holler and just be a kid. And I just don't think that's the same. She has the same chance to do that in New York where we could afford to live.
What is the financial difference in Ghana? What have you noticed?
Well, I think it benefits. The dollar is definitely a great currency to have. So quality of life is, I think, a lot higher. Just as an example, I have like a team of people to support me. So we have someone that we have a driver and someone that comes and cooks. And we also have someone that cleans, not full time, but those kind of things are considered luxuries in the States. In New York is super expensive, but that's something I can have almost on a weekly basis because I'm able to have the dollar stretch and still pay fairly. It's not even like, but it's also to being careful not to weaponize the dollar against the community that you come into, right? So even if you could pay 3 times as much, what about the person who can't pay 3 times as much? It's just like, are you imposing what is relatively cheaper to you compared to what's established in the market? So I'm careful about that.
Yeah, you're worrying about the larger economy and not kind of gentrifying in a weird way.
No, that's exactly what it is. So it's complicated when you think about what does it mean as African American to come back to Africa in the one sense, because you never asked to leave, right? You never asked to leave, one. But then what do you bring back that can complicate the relationship of coming back, right? What resources do you bring?
Fascinating.
Yeah, what resources do you bring? Like the dollar being a leverage piece, and like how do you use that to like pay for things and employ people, which is a good thing, but then making sure that you make it accessible still for everybody else that's already here. It's a dance for sure. But I would say overall, personally, my cost of living is lower, but my quality of life is higher.
What's the government like, or I'm just curious because the US is falling apart. What are the social services, or I think that we are held in America under like a bizarre Stockholm syndrome. And I know Stockholm syndrome's not real. Okay. I know. And so I'm always curious of places where it's like, no, they just are doing it. They're just doing it differently and better. And you guys could do that too, but you just don't think you can.
Well, I would say that I'm not an expert on Ghanaian politics. That's one thing. But I will say that Ghana is definitely, they just had elections, and the new president, Mahama, was the president like 2 terms ago. And people seem to really think he similar to 45 and 47, but people actually seem to really like him here. I mean, they still do like him in the States too. But Mahama seems to be pro community building structures that young people and the poor. So there's that. But if you're talking about social services, if you decide to come to Ghana, that you're going to have the same social supports as you do in America, you'll probably be very disappointed because those things don't exist. So people are your support system. Whereas the one thing that I do miss and give America respect for is the efficiency of some of its institutions. Not all of them, but most of them run, right? So say, for example, there's small business services. You can actually go into a small business service center, sit with a person for free because your tax dollars go to it, and they help you write a business plan. They give you free the pro bono support legally. Like those kind of things don't necessarily happen here. So it's definitely the structures and institutional things are not as visible and present as they are in the States. So people are your infrastructure versus institutions being an infrastructure, which makes it very difficult to infiltrate when you're new. And it's very hard to get in to some of these circles, which you may never get into. So I would say that, and the workaround with that is having money where you don't have to need people. You still need people, don't get me wrong, but the money, and unfortunately there is, every place there's corruption, but there's a different type of corruption here versus in America, where you could definitely see, even when you're at the airport and you're trying to get through customs, you can pay a customs agent like 50 CDs or 100 CDs just to get past or to get to the front of the line right there. So people like in the real time can be like, give me money and I'll get things done for you. That happens in the States all the time, but it's at a higher level, not at the lower level. Like there's more checks and balances there.
Wow. So do you take clients from around the world, or how do you?
Well, most of my work is still US focused, but like here, there's a sizable expat community. So Canadians, Americans, Brits, like they're all here too. So it's funny that I've been on panels here for women in money, and some have worked with me that way. But I like to stay US facing. One, because I'm still making sure that, well, it's my preference, just like that's what I know, that's who I love. And I live in Ghana, but my work and my heart is based on my identity as an African American, right?
Right.
Or someone. So I still, my heart and my work is there. So I don't mind. And the principles apply to all women. My goal is not to heal your relationship in Ghana necessarily. I've done workshops here, but it might still, like I said, not a high priority for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And that's what you know, and that's what you grew up with, and that's the American system. Interesting. It's interesting to, it makes sense to want to help and also to be like, bye.
Right. I feel like it's like a combination of just like, because the world is global and things can be done online, I can still talk to you, right? And still be where I'm at. And then whoever's listening can be wherever they are and still get the nuggets that they need. And I think that's the beauty of it. And also just the privilege of being in a position with financial literacy and having been able to claw out of myself out of debt, like being a living testament to being like, if something doesn't work for you, doing the financial planning to get yourself out of it. And it doesn't happen overnight, but that's what money, the options for, exercising your options, right? That's what it's for. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's all it is. That's what I would tell my younger self, is that money gives you options, and that having it's, because I was like, I'm an artist, and it's like, okay, but you could also maybe not think that you're the cast of Rent, and maybe just have money, and then you can have options for your art. Money and art are not enemies, which is what I thought for most of my life.
That's beautiful, that realization.
Thanks. Well, yeah, it's coming kind of late in the game, but here we are. So where can my audience find you and your work and your book and more about you?
My book, Heal Your Relationship with Money, I'll leave a link to it. Depending on where your community falls in terms of supporting big box companies or not, I have a link to my website where you can purchase it, and also for Amazon. But in general, you can get the free excerpt from my website, which I'll share with your community. You can find me online at the Frugal Feminista, my website, and on LinkedIn, Kara Stevens, and on Instagram, Frugal Feminista. And I'm not on X. On Facebook, for as much as I am the Frugal Feminista.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Bad with Money with Gabriel S. Dunn is a production of Noted Bisexual, produced by Melisa D. Monts and Diamond MPrint Productions. Edited by Diane Kang, post-production sound by Coco Llorens, production assistance by Melanie D. Watson, and music by Mike Kaplan, Zach Sherwin, and Jack Dolgen, sung by Sam Barbera. Thank you, love you, bye!